Hello, Feuzion. My name is Alex Fuse, the host of Feuzion News, and once again, we have another big show for you right now. I am on the phone with CBS Sports, WWE, and UFC reporter, the one and only Brian Campbell. Brian, I know you've been very fully, really immersed in the UFC this past few days, but let's get into the WWE. They had an event called the Crown Jewel. Some fans loved it, some fans didn't, or a lot of fans didn't. Did you enjoy this event, or, what didn't you like about it?
Yeah, wow. There was a lot going on there in Saudi Arabia with one of the most unforgettable builds to a pay-per-view you can ever imagine, with all of the controversy surrounding, should WWE have pulled out of Saudi Arabia with all the political tensions and headlines, and especially involving the death of the journalist. But in the end, it was as if WWE just sort of doubled down on everything negative and just went for it and didn't care. I mean, look, there was some fun stuff to like about the show. That Rollins-Ziggler match as part of that World Cup tournament was one of the better matches, I think, in the last few months in WWE. But, man, did they give a lot to hate, to just outright hate. And for all the bad taste in my mouth as a WWE fan and journalist and a lot of people, I just never imagined that card could end and look the way it did, from Brock Lesnar winning back the Universal Championship to Shane McMahon getting plugged in, of all people, to that main event, that 27 minutes for a match featuring four guys. I don't even know, a combined age of somewhere around 200. I mean, this was one of the worst WWE pay-per-views in modern history, without question. You could argue and try to say, well, it's not a real WWE pay-per-view because it takes place in Saudi Arabia and there's so much money involved. But, I mean, Alex, you got to be kidding me with the booking and the way that this came off, the taste that it left in your mouth. I've never felt so bad for guys like Shawn Michaels and Triple H in my life for even being a part of this.
Brian, you missed one thing that I think really left a bad taste in my mouth, was Hulk Hogan making his WWE return, blaring "I am the real American" in Saudi Arabia, not even looking at the past history of Hulk Hogan, the Hulkster, in the past few years in the WWE. He was fired for making racist comments in a past video, so that has to be put into there as well. And then, of course, making his return to Saudi Arabia and the WWE after everything that went down there. So that really, I mean, it's almost like Vince McMahon has had it, and he's just trying to prove a point time and time and again. When it comes to him, it's almost like he just doesn't care at this point in his career.
No, you nailed it. It's like we're past the point of using terms like tone deaf or stubborn or ignorant. I mean, this is just to bring Hulk. You mentioned it, to bring Hulk Hogan back in these type of circumstances was just like, throwing extra gasoline on the fire. It really was. I didn't know what to do with Hogan's appearance there, because you were already torn as a longtime fan of Hulk, if you are a fan of him, of just being like, wow, the things he did were sort of unforgivable. The way he handled the negativity of that wasn't too well at all. So you never knew how you wanted to see him back, but to see him back in those circumstances, just, oh, man. I mean, that alone would have been enough to turn off your TV set or unsubscribe. But, man, Alex, I'm not going to lie to you, I can't get over how bad that main event was. I can't get over how bad the build to that main event was. I can't get over that they let that thing go on for 27 minutes. It's like, forget that Triple H gutted through, a torn pectoral muscle. It was like, that should never have happened in the first place. That was your main event. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, Brian, I think I have to give a lot of credit where credit is due to Shawn Michaels. He hasn't wrestled in over 8 years, and he was one of the really, once Triple H went down, if you look at these four wrestlers, Triple H, Undertaker, Kane, and of course the unretired now, Shawn Michaels, you have to wonder, if you look at those four guys, Triple H is the most non-retired wrestler out of those four, and when he went down with the injury, the match relied on Shawn Michaels' shoulder, or no pun intended, and then Undertaker and Kane. I think maybe Kane out of the three is the least unretired two. And then so really you have to give credit where credit is due to Shawn Michaels really kind of carrying the match as best as he could with these implications that were really unscripted at all and just went bad. But, what was your takeaway from Shawn Michaels saying that he was never going to come out of retirement, coming out of retirement in this match?
Again, this was it. Really, again, it just adds to the distaste that I had for this entire event. The idea of Shawn ever ending that retirement, had like a sacred feel to it, because he, unlike almost every other wrestler, he had basically said, when I retired after that second WrestleMania match against The Undertaker, that was it. I wasn't going to go back on my word. I'd almost, he had used terms like he didn't want to spoil the memory of himself. He wanted to make the idea of him ever coming back super special. We thought, let's say, was it to open 2017 when AJ Styles put out that meme ahead of the Royal Rumble in San Antonio of him and Shawn Michaels staring down. Look, we thought if it was ever going to happen, it would be one of those deals. It would be a WrestleMania match against the guy of the future, the guy of now. To see it happen in a tag match against Kane and Undertaker, who already in 2018 have been overly used and abused in terms of why are they still out there, right? If you're doing a one-off at WrestleMania and it's a nostalgic act, you get it. But for Kane to have already been in a title match in January to open the year, just again, was really hard to get through. So to see Michaels dragged into this, when the point of all of this is pleasing the Saudi Arabian government for the money that they are giving WWE to host these shows, when that's the end game, when that's the only reason Shawn is back, it's just poorly handled. It's just a really bad PR nightmare. And it was almost like I wasn't allowing myself, and I think a lot of fans felt this, to even appreciate or consider that it was actually happening. And seeing Michaels, bald on top of that. Look, I mean, it happens when you're 50 years old. You get it. But it's just that a moonsault off the top rope where he landed on his face. These were sort of negative shots at his own legacy that as a fan, you're just like, why did you ever do this?
Yeah, and you wonder, what was a thought process in Shawn Michaels' mind? And, like you said, for the 8 years that he was retired, he's really committed to that. And you wonder, okay, well, why didn't he come back at that Royal Rumble match and face off against AJ Styles? I think that would have really been a move for him personally and career-wise that fans could have really bitten into. And unlike this, no one really talked about this. Oh, yeah, this is happening, and why is he out there type thing. But Shawn Michaels is at the Performance Center down in Florida working with these younger guys. And you have to wonder, maybe, just maybe, he kind of bought back into the wrestling business once he started maybe getting a mind reading, kind of like, I really want to go back into the ring, maybe not. What do you think maybe his reasoning was to get back into the ring after 8 years?
Well, you kind of nailed the connection there. He is working at NXT, and the guys love working with him. You can see it. You can see it in the videos WWE Social has put out. The friendship he's encountered with Johnny Gargano, the ab contest they had. It shows you can understand him getting a taste again for the business and falling back in love with it. But I interviewed him twice since he's returned to help out WWE and subsequently accepted a job with them, and it had just been so hard. No, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to be one of those guys. So, again, you would understand him breaking that for something that truly mattered. In fact, you'd be accepting. You'd be first in line to see him break that. But this certainly did not truly matter at all, and it was entirely all around the same theme of a money grab. And I think it really bastardized the special nature of how Michaels walked away, storyline-wise and real-life-wise. And sadly, ever since WWE announced this relationship with Saudi Arabia, there's been a lot of these moments. We saw a 50-man Royal Rumble that was excessive and didn't need to happen, and happened, less than a couple months after the actual Royal Rumble that is really a highlight to the WWE calendar. And you can go as far as saying, was the WrestleMania booking this year in New Orleans affected by the fact that they were going to Saudi Arabia just a couple weeks later? And I think you look back and yeah, it was. This wasn't the type of they were continuing storylines from WrestleMania to Saudi Arabia in ways that just seemed baffling. It's all about the money in the end. Look, it's a scripted entertainment show. It's hard to get too overly mad at that, but it's still real to us at times, damn it. And this was a moment this weekend where it does make you consider, why am I putting this much time into this?
I think Vince McMahon is too busy hanging out with Cardi B making money moves. But anyways, we'll switch gears now. And there was unfortunate news coming out of Monday Night Raw a few weeks ago, even dealing with all of the controversy of bringing the WWE over to Saudi Arabia. In the middle of all that controversy was the unfortunate news by Roman Reigns announcing that his leukemia returned and he's stepping away from the WWE, relinquishing the Universal Championship. So the WWE was really had to deal with that whole situation and find a new champion, and you bring in Brock Lesnar, and Brock Lesnar went over Braun Strowman at the Crown Jewel. But how does this really affect WWE long term? Now, once again, missing one of their top guys in the business.
Yeah, look, this was shocking news, and it was real life news, and it was, it really hit hard for viewers watching because it was so real in a way that things with WWE obviously certainly aren't. And you'd be naive to not have this conversation that we're having of how much this affects WWE financially in terms of the long-term booking plans when they've put so much into Roman Reigns, to the point, ad nauseum, they've put so much into him for being their future star, their next John Cena. What it does at the very bare minimum is open the door for someone new. And I think, like a lot of people, I thought that was going to be Braun Strowman. You were going to finally give him his chance that for the past year, when his booking had hit such a high level, but then was essentially put on pause each time something big would happen, this seemed like a no-brainer. Now, going back to Brock Lesnar, it speaks to two things. One, it might just mean that for Vince McMahon, nobody else is big enough in terms of a brand or that he can trust to carry that banner than Brock. But two, I think it has a lot more to do with Brock's impending return to the UFC early next year against Daniel Cormier for the heavyweight championship. And the idea, which I've been talking about since the beginning, people have laughed at me, but it's starting to gain steam, that I think the best commercial Vince could ever have is to have Brock Lesnar come back to the UFC and walk in with one of the WWE championships, in this case the Universal Championship, the red brand, around his stomach, as if, like, you want to legitimize wrestling, which is obviously illegitimate. It's a TV show. You want to make it feel as real as possible. Well, you send your champion into the real fighting surface and see what happens. And that sounds ridiculous, but you're already hearing Daniel Cormier after his victory last weekend at UFC 230 say, hey, I hope Brock brings that title with him, and I hope they put it on the line. So it's a lot of that craziness where it kind of ties in a weird way with Roman Reigns going down, which is really sad news for a guy right at the peak of his prime, a guy who really seems to be in that lineage of big stars that goes from, Hogan, Rock, Austin, Cena through Reigns. But wow, what an interesting move to not put the rocket pack on a Seth Rollins or a Braun Strowman, but to go back to the well with Brock Lesnar. And I don't care what anybody says. When Brock goes into that octagon, Vince wants to be a part of that. He wants the title belt right there.
No, I definitely agree with you, but I think that's such a high-risk, high-reward situation, because let's say if Brock Lesnar loses in that match, then you bring into the whole conversation, the biggest argument that people are going to say is, well, wrestling's fake. That title is fake. Brock Lesnar's not really a wrestler or a fighter. I think
that's more of a gamble for the UFC under that argument. That's why I thought it would be something that, Dana White and company would be, let's say, against the idea. But, this past Friday at the UFC 232 press conference they had at Madison Square Garden, the last question of the event, I raised my hand and then asked Dana straight up, look, Brock just won another WWE title. Would you allow him to bring the title into the octagon? And Dana was like, I don't care what he brings in. He can wear any belt he wants. So it seems like that's more of a gamble for UFC in the idea that fighting is real. Where if you're looking at WWE, there's already rumors that when they go to SmackDown on the Fox network at the end of 2019, that Fox wants Daniel Cormier as a broadcaster on that event to make it feel more sports-like and not fake. So how about the idea of, well, Brock Lesnar's probably going to lose to Cormier. Well, how about we have Cormier have the belt and we bring him on to Raw and we see if maybe he wants to do a match. I mean, there's a lot of potential spin-off and legs on where this might go.
Brian, maybe this is the way that CM Punk makes his long-awaited return to the WWE. If there's some way the UFC and the WWE can combine for a WrestleMania match, wouldn't that be something if CM Punk makes his return at WrestleMania?
Oh, you know better than that, Alex. If CM Punk is coming back, it's going to be in Saudi Arabia, nowhere else. I think we're pretty much assured of that at this point.
The face-off Shawn Michaels. Maybe even Hulk Hogan. maybe he'll face Hulk Hogan versus CM Punk next year in Saudi Arabia.
Never doubt, man.
Well, Brian, I want to say thank you so much for joining me on Fusion News today. And where can the fans follow you on Twitter along with your UFC content and your WWE? And where can they listen to your podcast as well?
Oh, thanks so much. B. Campbell, CBS on Twitter. You'll find all the information there for the podcast as well every week. talking about boxing, MMA, WWE. Hey, if there's a fight going on, we're going to talk about it for sure. So thanks so much for your time, man. Always great chatting with you.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks again for coming on today. I greatly appreciate it.
You got it.
All right, Feuzion News, you just heard from the Brian Campbell from CBS Sports. We broke down the Crown Jewl pay-per-view in Saudi Arabia. We broke down the unfortunate news coming out of Roman Reigns stepping down, relinquishing the Universal Championship, and also the future for the UFC and the WWE. Well, Fuse Nation, I want to say thank you so much once again for listening to the show. What a week we have for you on Feuzion News. Tim Brandon is coming on this week. Also, Steve Peralta from the Section 10 podcast coming on this week. Very big interviews, very big shows coming up. I'm excited. I know you are, so you have to be a subscriber of Feuzion News. Thanks again for listening. Follow me on Twitter @AlexFuse, and I will be seeing you very soon. Thanks for listening.